Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. In our last session, we have discussed about organizing the scientific document. This is the continuation of the same lecture. Uh, in the last session, we have discussed how you can suggest the title for your research paper. Moreover, we have also discussed the abstract part, how you can organize the abstract part of your paper, in which we have discussed that you can mention about the context of your paper, what is the objective that you are going to do, and what are the methods you will be using, and what are the results that you have achieved by using those methods, and in the end, the few sentences about the conclusion. Okay, in this session, which is the part 2 of the organizing the scientific document, we'll be discussing the introduction part. Introduction is a very important part of your paper. While writing the introduction, you must be actually highlighting, or you must be introducing all the new things that you will be using in your paper, all of the scientific terms that you will be using. You must introduce them in the introduction. Remember that you cannot mention the new things, even the new terms, new technologies in your paper while discussing your method, that you have not actually introduced in the introduction part. So that is very crucial. Moreover, introduction is also crucial for increasing the citations or the references, because for a given paper it is always desired that you must be including a lot of references, because it gives an impression that you have an extensively you have reviewed the literature, and you know about the area, and you know about the solutions that those people have already proposed. That gives this impression. So if you want to increase the citations or the references, so this is the actual the section of your paper where you can mention your references, because later on, after this, you will be discussing about the related work section. In the related work, you will be actually citing the few researchers. Those are particularly related to your research problem, but those may be 7 or 8 references. But if you want to increase your references, you must be mentioning it in the introduction part. So try to include as much as references in the introduction. That will give a good impression about your paper. Okay, introduction is basically a very scientific part of your paper. It's not like you can include any of the text in your introduction. It has a theme and it has an objective. Okay, for example, in the introduction part, you must be introducing your problem statement. That is foremost thing. Okay, before continuing, let me emphasis on that point, that the introduction, while writing the introduction, it is actually a very systematic procedure. Your each and every paragraph must have a theme, right? And even in the paragraph, each sentence that must also be coherent to the previous sentence. I'll be focusing on it later on, but it is a scientific procedure. You cannot include any of the random text in the introduction. Each and every paragraph, I'm emphasizing on this point. Each and every paragraph must have a theme, right? I will tell you about it, how you can include those paragraphs and how you can organize them. That is very important. It because your whole paper is like a story building. Each and everything is already introduced to you, and then later on it different references are given to the previously discussion that have already been discussed. So it's like a story building. Okay, what are the main paragraphs that can be composed of the introduction? For example, you must be introducing the problem, the area where you are going to work. For example, it can be cloud, social networks, anything about it. So first you need to introduce the area, then later on you proceed with the problem in that area. What is the problem that you are going to highlight? Okay, always remember, do not include the irrelevant things. Always focus on the relevant things that you are going to do. For example, there can be a lot of problems within that area, but you must be discussing the problem that you are going to address, right? So you must be focused. Then you discuss the problems within those areas. Then obviously that area must have been focused by the several different researchers as well. They must have also worked in the same area, uh, because your proposal is basically it can be the extension of the existing solutions, or all the way you are introducing a new solution to the problem. And definitely there must be the existing solutions, because if there are no existing solutions, then you cannot mention any of the references or any of the literature review in the related work section. Okay, so you must focus on the existing solutions. You must highlight them. Remember, you have a dedicated section for the related work, so you're not actually introducing their methodologies. You just mention them, that they have also proposed, Mr. XYZ, he has proposed this solution, and he has his solution was based on this particular technology, and it's like this. You do not discuss the methodology in the introduction part, right? Because it may get confusing, because when I will be discussing about the related work section, and there can be a question that if we are mentioning the existing literature in the introduction part, then it may be a redundant that to write about the existing literatures in the introduction and in the related work section only. Uh, Also, let me emphasize on that point. You do not mention each and every literature review that you are going to mention in the related work section in the introduction part. You just mention few of the researchers and their work in the introduction part, that they have also used several different technologies, but they were unable to achieve those results. Okay, once you have mentioned about the literature, the existing solutions, then you must highlight the problems in those existing solutions, because if there are no problems, then you do not have a space to work on it. You must mention their problems and their issues, and those issues must be the one that you are going to focus on. You cannot mention all of the problems, because uh, you only mention those problems that you are going to address, because there can be a lot of problems with them. But if you are mentioning them and you are not addressing them in the solution, then it's useless. Then you have no right to highlight those problems if you are not addressing those problems, right? So you only mention the problems or the issues that you are going to address in your solution. And then later on you actually conclude the whole introduction part by stating that you are going to propose some novel method that will be based on such and such technology, and it will solve our issues that are there in the existing solutions. So this is the way you organize the introduction part. I will discuss them in more detail in my upcoming session. Okay, first let's talk about the introduction. I've given the whole overview, and if you can focus that I have actually given the introduction and the things that I have discussed in a systematic way, because you start from the background, then you discuss about the existing solutions, those who have worked in that, you talk about the area, and then in the area what were the problems, and who have worked on those problems, and then what are the problems with this existing solutions, and then at the end you are discussing your own solution that solves those problems which are there in the existing solutions. So as you can see, it is a coherent, and it is systematic, and it is in a flow. You cannot mention, you cannot change the sequence of these discussions in the introduction, because it is coherent and it is in a flow. Okay, that is the important point that you need to focus on. Okay, introduction may contain the following paragraphs. Introduction to the research area in the broader sense. As I have already introduced, you discuss about the research area. Then uh, these are actually, each bullet you can make them as a one paragraph. In the second paragraph you can talk about the issues that are coherent to your research problem, right? What are the problems? For example, you're working on social networks, and social network can have several different security issues, performance issues. There can be several different aspects, but do mention all those issues that you are going to address. Then in the third paragraph, you can talk about the existing solutions that address the highlighted issues. There must be several different solutions that those who have already worked on it. Okay, how you are going to discuss those solutions? You highlight their issues with respect to your solution. First, you only mention about, you cite them, and you mention about their technologies that they have used. Only the technologies, no discussion about those technologies, how they have used, right? This is not the actual objective in the introduction part. How they have done it, we'll be discussing it in the related literature or the related work section. Right here we only discuss about their methodology, what was their methodology, and then you actually highlight the issues with respect to your solution. That is very important part. Right here you must be focusing on with respect to your solution, because you discuss all the issues with respect to your solution, because there can be a several different issues with the existing solutions, but you only discuss with respect to your solution, because what you are going to address them, you must be discussing in here. Support your claim by the references and stats, right? That is also important. Whatever the claim you have mentioned, it must be supported with the appropriate citation. For example, you are writing some statistics that 30% of the people they know about this thing. So where does this 30% came from? You cannot just mention them by yourself. It must be supported by a appropriate reference. Uh, that is very important, because whatever the claim you're making, uh, either it must be based on your results, number one, because you will be proving them in your experiment sections. You can then claim it, but if there's a claim and you have not worked on it, that claim must be supported by appropriate reference or the citation. Okay, in the end, this particular point of the bullet, that is the we are discussing the existing solutions and their issues, that may be comprised of one or two paragraphs. Then later on in the last paragraph, you talk about your contributions that solve the identified issues. Identified issues are those issues that you actually identified in the existing solutions, right? So you talk about them in the last paragraph, that you have some specific technology, some specific method that will be solving those highlighted issues. Okay, one more important thing in the introduction thing, as I have not mentioned them in these bullets or the items, that is the actually the terms that you're going to use. For example, ABAC is a term, and for example, your solution is based on the attribute based access control systems, right? ABAC stand for this. And you have actually, you are using that ABAC in your proposed solution. Then it is important to discuss the ABAC system or the ABAC model in the introduction part. That is very important thing, because you will be mentioning about the ABAC thing in your proposed solution. But if there is a reader who do not know about the ABAC, you must give them the details in the introduction. That is very important thing. Also remember that whenever you're writing the research paper, you must be keeping in your mind that you are actually writing for a new user. because if a new user who reads about your paper, and after reading the paper he can understand about the area, what he can understand about the problems in the area and those who have worked in that area and what are the problems in that area. So that is very important. You actually prepare this document with respect to new user, the one who do not have any idea about the area or the problem, right? So you prepare the document in such a way. Okay, in the last one, you talk about your contributions. And remember, that is very important, and as I have already discussed it in more detail, you cite the references as much as you can support the claims and the statements, right? It's important. You must be including a lot of references in the introduction part. How you can include them? For example, there can be several different claims, and there can be several different statements. Support them with the references. This is the way you can actually increase the citations or the references. Okay, we'll discuss all of these paragraphs with the help of some examples. Okay. The first one, the paragraph one, for example, how you can write about the introduction to the research area in the broader sense. That was the part one. Uh, in this particular, we're talking about now the paragraphs. The first paragraph must be comprised about your research area. You talk about the research area, right? No, the theme of this paragraph is only the research area. You cannot mention about the problems, about the solutions in that paragraph, because they have uh, a different paragraph for these things. So you only focus on the research area in the whole paragraph. You can write about several different sentences in the in this paragraph. It's up to you. Okay, as an example, as you can see, I have taken this paragraph from one of the published paper that was published in a good venue or the good journal. Okay, one more important thing with the journal thing that came in my mind. There are two different venues where you can publish or where you can prepare your research paper for them. One of them is the conference venue, and another one is the journal venue. In the journal venue or the journal document, you have your document. It is more in length as compared to a conference paper. In the conference paper, you have actually the limitation to limit your paper in within a few pages. For example, 7 pages, 8 pages. Usually that is the requirement set by the publisher or the conference that actually you're going to prepare the paper for. So they actually restrict you that you cannot increase your document more than 7 pages, for example. Then whatever I have discussed, you can actually summarize it, right? You can limit them. You can reduce the number of paragraphs, because in the introduction I am discussing it with respect to the journal, because in the conference maybe 2 or 3 paragraphs can be there, because you will have to limit your document. If you include this whole text in your research paper, then definitely it will increase the length of your paper, and then you will violate the condition of the conference, and your paper may be rejected, because you will have to strictly follow the guidelines of the conference. For example, you cannot exceed the if you exceed, then they will charge you for the number of pages. If you want this same paper to be published, you will have to pay in addition to the conference registration fees, right? So that's what your actually intelligence comes, where you will have to put your intelligence to limit your paper. You can reduce them, or you can summarize these paragraphs in your the conference paper, but as far as the journal paper, for sure you can include all of those paragraphs. For the journal, you do not have any limitation about the size of your paper. The minimum requirement is set, but as far as the maximum requirement, you do not have any limitation. You can increase any number of pages, but for the limited pages or the initial amount of the pages it is required basically. For example, it must be more than 14 pages, 15 pages. It depends on the type of font you're using as well. Okay. uh, with this, I'm going to close this session, and the rest of the details you can find it in the next part 3 of the program.